The Oversight Committee on State and Local Public Assistance Programs will come to order. Will the clerk please call for the roll for today's attendance?
Chair Wolford.
Here.
Representatives Bruck.
Present.
Cara.
Here.
Cerniglu. Here. Menser.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 5 members present. You do have a quorum.
Thank you. Representative Menser moves to adopt the minutes on March 27th meeting. There being no objections. Actually, it's not March 27th.
The March 20th?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, for the March 20th. Thank you. Representative Menser moves to adopt the minutes from March 27th meeting. There being no objections, the motion prevails by unanimous consent. Today, thank you for being here, to all of you. We have Dwayne Haywood, Senior Deputy Director, Economic Stability Administration, ESA, and Michigan Department of Health and Human Services with us today. Thank you for being here. Mr. Haywood has a presentation, and time permitting, we look forward to hearing that. But I would like to discuss the MiBridge and application portal today. Mr. Casey Markinen, my associate legal counsel from the House GOP Office of the Legal Counsel, will be assisting us on this. And as mentioned, I know that you have a presentation, and hopefully we'll be able to get to that as well. So thank you. As mentioned, thank you for being here and being willing to answer some tough questions. But before we get to your presentation, we prepared a slideshow with some screenshots that we pulled from Michigan Bridge Card application portal. So with that said, I'll turn it over to, yes, Mr. Haywood, if you'd come up. Thank you, sir. Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair, the first slide that we have here shows the initial login page for a bridge card application.
So, Mr. Haywood, my question for you is, why is it that we would allow a guest application instead of requiring a person to create an account that would be specifically associated with them?
Just, again, thank you, Chair, for this opportunity. Just wanted to be clear, just give me that question again.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, so obviously when people come to this portal to apply for benefits, it allows them to sign in with a guest application versus requiring a person to create an account. So why would we allow that, knowing that people have a potential of being on benefits for years and receiving tens of thousands of dollars? Why would we have a guest portal and not require them to create an account?
Okay, that's a good question. And one of the things that we want to make sure is that everyone has an opportunity to apply. So we don't know exactly when they actually come in. And sometimes we have some challenges with our technology. When you mention and reference a guest, that still has to go through the portal. Once it actually goes in as a guest, then it actually is transposed through the MiBridge system into the Bridges system, and then it drops for the actual verifications, the income. So it goes through the entire scenario to get us to a actual benefit. So the benefits are not, even as a guest, they're not actually receiving benefits until they go through the portal, until we actually do our checks that we need to do.
Mm-hmm. What would be the difference between those? You said it's created because you have technological issues with people using the portal?
Sometimes you do. You have the digital divide where you have folks who may not have a computer. They may basically go on phones, the mobile devices, and so and sometimes there are challenges. Not all the times, but sometimes. And we want to make sure that at least we get the application in the system, and then we actually have an opportunity to go through the verification process.
Okay, thank you. Representative Cerniglu.
Thank you, and thank you for being here today. What I'm looking at on the slide here on my paper copy, because I can't see that. I think I need some glasses here. But it looks like the reason you would do a guest is because you may not have a phone number or an email. Just to maybe further understand, it's certainly possible, I would think, that people applying for benefits may not have emails or may not have regular electronic devices like many of us do. But if you're applying for benefits, you may not have those, and you may not have a permanent phone number. You may have, I think there's phones you can get temporarily where you have different phone numbers. So maybe in those cases, it would be better to, or you would have to apply or start as a guest. And it also looks like when you're doing that as a guest, there are some things that you would not be able to do listed here. So is that kind of an accurate understanding of why someone might have to do that?
That would be absolutely. That's one of the areas, and so of course, you want to fill in those gaps. But again, once it actually it's when you have those gaps, that's when we go through the process, the portals. Again, it goes through the MiBridges into the Bridges system, and then we go through the process and start filling in those blanks.
Sure.
And then that's the verification. So we have to call back and we have to make sure we verify. So yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So in essence, you're saying, depending on the day or the time, one of the portals is better than the other, depending on technology or?
I would say the portals are pretty good, and of course there are, but to be honest with you, sometimes there are challenges with the portal, and whether it's down for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but we're able to get back in and make sure we get it up. But for the most part, we see so many applications coming in, 2.5 million, and so we're pretty good with the process.
Yeah, with 2.5 million, we definitely want to get that right. Yes,
oh yes,
sir.
definitely want to get it right.
Well, thank you. Let's move on.
Mr. Chair, the next slide just shows the start of our test application through the guest option on the Bridge portal, so that we selected every single program we could in an attempt to qualify for the most aid possible.
Thank you.
This next slide takes us to the introduce yourself portion of the MiBridge card application. All that is required on this page before continuing is a name and a date of birth.
So, Mr. Haywood, you obviously could see some concerns from taxpayers and constituents. My question is, could you explain why DHHS does not require a Social Security number or an alien number at this stage for someone who may or may not be a citizen?
So again, one of the things that we look for is as it's processed in the system, we have a check and balance, and so it wouldn't move forward even if it at the front end not ask for a Social Security number, but at the back end we have several ways that we're going to check it and bounce it against our mainframe, i.e. the systematic verification eligibility system, which also bounces against the Social Security. And if for some reason the information is not verified, then it's going to show up to a specialist office where it won't be certified. And so then more information needs to be followed up. But again, no benefits are issued until that certification is done and complete.
So it sounds like we should probably just skip the first couple of pages because it seems like it gets better at the end. Is that what you're telling me, further along as we go into this process?
No,
and I'm not being rude. My question is that so far on the first two slides, we've said that if there's an issue on these, right, that it gets picked up on the back end. So why even have this on the front end if all this gets picked up on the back end?
Because it's a small percentage that you're talking about that have the missing information. We would prefer to have all the information, and we could process right through to getting the verifications, which normally we do. So what we're talking about is a small percentage.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for that explanation. Representative Cernoglu.
Thank you. Yeah, so I do see that it says Social Security number is only required for applicants. So so I'm not concerned that you're not requiring it because it says it is concerned for applicants. But just out of curiosity, like why would someone go through this process if they were not an applicant? Would it just be so they could set up an account so that it would be easier to apply in the future, or like what? Why would they do that?
Well, I would say that a lot of Michigan residents apply for a number of reasons, just to see if it could go through, to see if the verifications is checked and if they could get the benefits. Okay, fine. So there could be a number of reasons, but
So it might be like an inquiry, but not actually.
yes. A lot of
Lying.
times just inquiry and just to see if they can, they meaning residents will go through a process. But again, it's flushed out.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. And Mr. Haywood, before we move on to the next slide, and I mean this in the most respectful way, if you want some extra time on some questions as it relates to these slides, so far the answers have been that we take care of it on the back end, but my questions specifically are for what are we doing on the front end? So hopefully we get an answer different than that we take care of this on the back end, because obviously our questions are based on this front, but thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair, the fifth slide, we get to the contact and address information portion of the bridge card application. Here, we've attempted to use the Michigan Governor's Office for the address.
So just to be clear, if someone marks that they're homeless on this portion, you don't require an address for further verification of that, is that correct?
If someone actually marks that they're homeless, it depends on where they're at, the zip codes, and then they will be assigned to one of our local offices as a permanent address or temporary address until we can actually do the verifications and all.
So similar to the Michigan Governor's Office.
I'm not aware of the Michigan Governor's Office. I'll have to, now that's one I'll have to check with you on that one.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, thank you. My concern is, and I think the concern of every taxpayer is, so far on these slides, we're relying on self-attestation, right? Trusting and believing that somebody is telling the truth, right? So that's a concern, and that's why I bring it up. So thank you for that.
Mr. Chair, this next slide shows what happens if you've entered an address and you select the option to validate that address.
So is this portion here, Mr. Haywood, is this the extent of your address verification? And if so, do you not require further proof?
We do. We do. Again, the information that is incomplete and unless we get verifications across the board. And then if you put in an address and we do our verifications, and we cross-check it with the Social Security, with the IRS, as well as our BIN. If it comes back with that address, then that is the verification. There is then, sometimes there will be interviews if there's still further questions from our specialists, but that's where we make sure that we don't have any gaps in addresses.
I can only imagine how busy your office is with 2.6 million people signing up and having to go through this with them. My question also is, do you not require a light bill or a piece of mail or anything else that would establish residency? I ask that because, when I go to the gym in my local community, I have to show them that I live there in order to be able to use the gym. Yet we're counting on the credibility or the truthfulness of an individual to tell us who they are. And so you can see why this is a little concerning or should be very concerning to the taxpayer.
But to be clear, we do require our verifications. We have many verifications, and a part of the verifications would be that address or bill or whatever, because there are several ways that we verify. So again, when it goes through the system and our specialists are able to check, that's what they're looking for. They're verifying the
On the back
address
end? On the back end?
You keep saying on the back end, but we still, it has to go through a process before and the process is not the end where we issue the benefits. The process is, it's making sure we have everything filled in before we certify. And so that the back end is the benefits that go out. But before those benefits go out, that's a part of the verifications. And I would be glad to give the committee all of the verification checklists that we go through.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, the next slide shows an option to submit an unfinished application after the contact and address information. Up to this point, the only required information to continue has been a name, date of birth, and an address.
Would you read that again?
Up to this point, the only required information has been a name, date of birth, and an address.
So, sir, why are people allowed to even submit an unfinished application at this point?
Well, again, we certainly want as many of our residents to fill in information, or at least to submit. You could have residents who have some type of disability that can't necessarily fill in and need their family members to help, but we don't want to deny. So, again, I think really what's important is, I understand what you're saying, but one of the things that we have to go through is that's the verification. And if there are questions, then we need to get those questions answered. We won't verify a checklist. Every single application gets a check, a certification. If that certification is not done, then we go back and try to pick up that information. No benefits will be released until.
Representative Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Haywood, for coming and answering our questions today. Did I hear you correctly that we want to have as many people as possible go through this application process?
We don't want to deny. I mean, that's our federal guidelines, that we can't just say, hey, we're going to set standards at the beginning and you can't apply. That's against the federal guidelines. And so where we have to make sure that we have a pretty tight system in place when you apply, and in order to make sure that we issue the correct benefits.
And Michigan only has a certain finite amount of resources available to help people or do whatever it does with taxpayers' resources. Is it possible that if some people get through the cracks and end up qualifying for some of these benefits, that creates a constraint on other people who may need it more?
Again, if you think about the millions of benefits that we issue, it's a fine line. I mean, it's not a large number. And the reason why it's not a large number is because of the continuous checks, i.e., even after the checks, we have redeterminations that we have to come back in 6 months, 12 months, and check again, to double check and make sure nothing has changed. So it is a systematic process all the way through. And even after we're complete, we go back through it again.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I actually have 3 questions, kind of topics, I guess. So just first of all, so it sounds like you allow people to access this so they can get more information, so that they can kind of start the process, connect with you, so that we're not missing anyone who needs assistance. We're not leaving people who need, to get this to survive for their families, out of the ability to do that. Is that kind of a correct assessment of why you allow that? Secondly, it sounds like this is just for you to gather information, kind of like a introductory form, so to speak, although it's very comprehensive. There are a lot of pages here. I am not concerned that you're not asking a lot of questions after looking through all of this, but this is not actually what you use when you're approving the benefits. You have other requirements, checklists that are not here. So I almost wonder if it would be more, effective in answering whatever questions we may have, just to hear about those rather than go through this and ask you, why isn't this here? Why isn't that here? Because this is just a form that people are filling out to initially, get their name in front of you. Is that accurate?
Is it a question or a statement that you're making?
Well, I'm trying to figure out if that's accurate. So my question is that an accurate assessment of? So yes, it's very much a question.
Okay.
Because I'm not an expert. This is my first time looking at this.
And you're absolutely right. And one of the benefits also is that if you look at the system, it directs you to a lot of different community resources within that MiBridge system long before. So, and on the front end, you could certainly look at it and say, hey, I need a benefit, or I need some type of services. Here are the 211. Here is the housing. So there's a lot of other features within that MiBridge system that allows our residents to look for, even as they're applying.
Thank you. Just one other question. I do have other questions, but I can wait till we move forward a little bit. It sounded like there was some concern there for people maybe getting benefits somehow fraudulently, or that didn't, qualify. Is there a penalty for that? I assume that's illegal and that's a crime.
Yes, and you could be under an intentional program violation, which you could be banned for life for any type of future benefits. And one of the things that I'll talk about in my presentation is the partnership that we have with OIG, the fee, just something else that we actually do to help us to make sure that we are making sure the integrity of these programs are intact.
Thank you.
Representative Menser.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just kind of looking at the fine print here, and it says specifically, MDHHS will still need to receive your completed application before any benefits can be approved. So they will eventually submit their Social Security number, and they will eventually submit proof of residency. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Haywood, thank you for bringing up the partnership or working with OAG. I see that after working with them, you figured out a way to have saved $50 million. Is that correct?
That's correct. In both programs, I think you're looking at the Paris as well as the fee front end. Yes.
Right. Okay. Also, I would take you up on, I'd like to request that you provide this committee the data of these unfinished applications. Formally, I'm asking for that. You so graciously agreed to that before I even asked, so thank you for your hospitality there. Specifically, I'd like to see a breakdown of how often these are submitted versus how often they are granted or denied. And also, we'd request similar data on finished applications. Is that good?
Yeah, that's
okay,
good.
Thank you, sir.
The unfinished applications will be kicked out, but I'll provide all that information.
Okay,
for you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, the next slide shows the first page that pops up after someone decides to continue with their application rather than do an unfinished one. It's a slide showing an option for expedited food assistance.
So, Mr. Haywood, what happens when someone applies for this expedited food assistance? And also, do these expedited requests get granted without the same verification process as a standard claim?
For the regular food assistance, expedited is an emergency that a person would come in and apply for emergency, and we have to determine within 6 days. So we have a short window so we could make sure, and we do those verifications, but we do have to issue those benefits on that 7th day if they're applying for expedited benefits. But then we come back to make sure that they are qualified under the system.
So my question for you then would be, how could you possibly verify someone with 7 days or less mentioning potential 2.6 million people. So far, we're 8 slides in to something that is eventually going to get verified. How is that possible? And if it is possible, I want to commend you, because it'll be the first government agency that could handle that many people that quick. So I'd like to hear on that, sir.
We work hard to try to make sure that we get to that end result. On that 7th day, we issue the benefits. That's a federal standard, and so we have federal guidelines that basically are put in place that the state really cannot supersede. And therefore, when you're talking about expedited, that's the federal side, and there's minimum requirements according to the rules. But then you have to go back under the actual verification. So 6 days, you work at it. 7th day, you issue the benefits. That's a federal requirement, not a state.
6 days you shall work, and on the 7th you'll rest. Sounds familiar. Thank you for that. Let's move to the next slide.
Mr. Chair, the 9th slide is split into 2 portions just because it was too big to fit on one. It shows the 1 page for household member application portion of the bridge card. As we've learned in prior hearings, the number of household members is a factor that directly determines how much aid someone gets.
So this one fascinates me.
You can read that?
Up there? Oh, yeah. That's, yeah. Yeah.
I got glasses on, come on now.
Yeah. Focusing on this top section of the slide, why in the world, and everyone that listens to this or is watching, would we allow, why would DHHS permit people to apply for assistance on behalf of another household member on this portal?
That's, I'd have to look at that. That's not necessarily what I would say is correctly or accurate. So I don't know about that one. I'd have to look at that one, because we would not, for each beneficiary, they have to apply, they meaning for themselves. And
But unfortunately, that's not what's happening here on that slide. So, and I don't expect you to have this answer, but I'd also like to know how much we've paid, taxpayers have paid for this website and this portal here. Also, does the amount of aid increase based on the number of eligible persons in that household, sir?
There's a federal list, and basically it gives you the breakdown. If a household family of 1, no income, it gives you the numbers. So it's pretty much standard based on the federal guidelines.
Okay. But how do you know who's eligible without proper verification at this point?
You don't know until you actually do the verifications, and at that point, you know, when you get all of the income, you get household members, then you determine the budget, and you determine at that point what they would fall in, what category they would fall in.
Okay. And before we get to the bottom portion, Representative Cerniglu, do you have a question?
I do. In reference to applying for other household members, could that apply to maybe children or disabled members of the household, or even elderly? Like I'm 1,000% sure that my mother's passed now, but before she was, that she would not be able to get online and apply for this by herself. Could those be the other members that they're referring to?
That's correct. There could be the other members, particularly the children, and so but the children would be under that one grant. A senior would be under the grant, but then you'd have to have the person who you're applying for, you're assisting, have to sign that you are authorizing to assist based on the disability or whatever the challenge may be.
Okay, thank you.
So the people that would sign, you also are verifying that somehow as well?
Yes, at the end.
Looking at those signatures, going back, making sure the people are who they said they were, or we still at the self-attestation portion of this, of still just trusting and believing the individual filling this out?
Again, we through our verification process, so I think that it would be good to just give you the verification processes that we go through, which are a number.
Thank you. And you didn't create this website, just to be clear?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so thank you for answering these. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How many total applications are approved from 2024 for bridge cards, or possibly 2023 if you don't have 2024 yet?
For 2024, I'd have to get those numbers for you, because you're asking for how many applications come in and who.
How many were approved, just total volume approved for the year? How many people are getting bridge cards for 2024?
I'd have to get that specific number, and I can get that back to you.
Okay, so, and then I guess I'd be interested in the total number of approved applications, as well as if it includes for a family of 3 or 4, what would the total number of people who are benefiting from the application be if it's a family household receiving the assistance? Because those would be 2 different numbers.
Okay, so yeah, you're right, 2 different numbers, because if you get the verification and there's a beneficiary with 3 children, that's a family household of 4.
Yes.
That's one, and so you'll get the benefits for that. Now, the second one, you're saying, what was the second one?
Well, so just what number is total number of approved applications for bridge cards, and then some of those approved applications for bridge cards will have multiple people for that application. And then of course, they'd get more money in terms of benefits because they have dependents at home, children, for example. And so I would like to see those 2 numbers, total number of approved applications and total number of people benefiting from the approved applications. For either 2024 or 2023 would be great. Thank you.
Mr. Hayward, you had mentioned that, up until this point, if the system or the portal is failing, we get through to the end or there are other processes. So my question is, on the many applicants determined to be fraudulent, how many of those are referred to the AG for prosecution? And then of those referred to the AG, how many are actually prosecuted? As Representative Cernoglu had mentioned, there's a punishment for people who don't obey the law. So what does that look like under these questions, sir?
Yeah. No, I didn't say the system was failing. I said that there are times that there are technology challenges. I mean, it's a pretty good system, and we are even moving towards 3.0 to improve the platform. So having said that, again, the amount that is actually referred to our OIG, we refer every single case that we feel that might be fraudulent activities. The minute we see it, the minute we understand, we refer. We have constant meetings with the OIG, even our fraud detection. So it's something that it's up on our mind.
So you're sending those to the, not to the AG, you're sending them to the
OIG, Office of Inspector General, who works with the AG, and if there's, millions of dollars that we have to come, they have a special unit, and I'm sure I'd be glad to bring them in because it's pretty robust.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Let's move to the next slide. Thank you. Actually, before we move on to the next slide, back that up. I apologize. There's a bottom portion on there. Would you remind me? Because I'm having a hard time to see that.
So, yes, Mr. Chair. For clarification, the top red circle circles a box that's checked that says applying for other household members. The bottom section has a red circle that circles if we select the option claiming we are not a U.S. citizen.
So, obvious question. What does DHHS do if someone marks that they are not a U.S. citizen or a national? My concern is, up until this point, no Social Security, no alien number, and now we're giving people an out by marking them. So what happens if someone marks that they're not a citizen or a legal alien?
Yeah, so up until this point, again, no benefits have been issued. And again, we back into the verification. You know, we don't know, because sometimes someone could even just miss the information and not get it, at least fill it in. But if you're talking about, you know, the information coming in that someone is not a U.S. citizen, again, that verification, that systematic alien verification system that bounces up against the mainframe of the Social Security and the IRS will help us.
Thank you, sir. Representative Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if somebody is not a U.S. citizen, do they not qualify for these benefits then?
If they're not, no, they would not
They would
qualify.
not? So then would maybe they not fill out the rest of this application process after that? Or would they still be able to fill out the rest of the process if they say no to that question?
They would be able to go through the process, but again, the key
But then
thing,
you would catch them later is the thought. But that's time and energy that you guys have to spend to catch them later. If they say no here, maybe you could put in a feature to where they can't fill out the rest of it. That way we can save DHHS a bunch of time moving forward. Would that make sense?
Could be another 50
glad
million.
you asked that question. Bridges 3.0. We know that we've got some things that we can put in place, and that's one of the things that we're looking at. So, but we're just starting that mainframe. So that's a good question.
All right, thank you.
So if we have people that are going on this portal and they're choosing to say that they're here illegally, can I get a copy of that report as well, sir?
Which report now we talking about?
My question is, we have people coming on to a website to get taxpayers' money and self-admitting that they are not here legally. And so since we have that data, that would be good for us to be able to look into, would it not?
The application, I mean, it would be kicked out, so I'm not clear what your question is, what you're asking.
All right. He just explained that. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Yep, absolutely. Representative Cerniglu.
Thank you. I guess now I have two questions, but actually, you may have already answered one because it was similar to Representative Carr's question. And I think my understanding might be incorrect. I did believe that certain individuals who had proper documentation and were in fact legal immigrants who perhaps were going through the process of citizenship or in various different stages might be eligible for some benefits. I don't know which benefits those are, but I thought that there was some eligibility for legal, not illegal immigrants.
Right, and again, there is. For example, we could talk about the Medicaid, the emergency services, and again, 90 days. But you know, if it's a federally recognized status, then they would be qualified, but they would still have to go through
The application, verification,
yes.
Absolutely. And then kind of bringing my second question here. So I may be reading this form differently, but I do not see anything on this form that's where someone would indicate that they were an illegal immigrant. Am I missing something? Am I not seeing something? Because there's nothing on this form where someone would be stating that they were an illegal immigrant, is there?
You know, that piece, I want to make sure that we made a couple of modifications, so I can't answer that right now, but I can get that back to you.
Sure, because I believe if they had a number that would indicate that they are in fact legal, and that is why they would have that number. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Haywood. Next slide.
Mr. Chair, the next slide shows the two household members we selected for this test application. One, John Doe, aged 173, is the primary applicant, who lives with a Jane Doe, who's aged 103 years old.
They may be already getting Social Security, by the way. But what happens if DHHS sees an application from someone over 100 years old? And does that get flagged automatically, or does it have to also go through this manual review process?
For the most part, our specialists are really good with in any inconsistencies, and that's one of the things that we have with even the in-person verifications. And so that would be a red flag. I mean, if you looked at it. But again, and once they actually detect that, then they would just send it over to OIG and say, hey, we think that this is an issue that we need to look at. At the same time, they would flag those. They wouldn't issue any benefits, and so. Again, that cross-check. But, again, our specialists, as we continue to work with them, they're pretty good with, inconsistencies is what will give us a red flag, and they would make the adjustments.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, the next slide will show, essentially to Representative Cernoglu's question, this is the page that pops up when someone selects that they are not a U.S. citizen.
So, question, just to be clear, it's true that this page just to be clear, it's true that this page does not even pop up if someone has self-attested to being a citizen?
In order for me not to give you incorrect information, I'd have to look at it again. So, I mean, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Assuming someone is honest about potentially being able to be on benefits for multiple years and tens of thousands of taxpayer dollars, let's assume someone's being honest about not being a citizen. Does DHHS require anything other than an alien number at this point?
Yes, and that would be, again, the verifications. I keep going back to verifications because there are multiple verifications. Taking the federal requirements and then looking at our requirements.
Yes, sir. So regarding that, I would, actually, before I get there, go ahead, Representative Caro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to clarify from my earlier question, there are some non-U.S. citizens who may be here on a work visa who could qualify for these benefits. Is that correct, to clarify from earlier?
If it's federally approved from the federal government, we have a list of our what's federally approved, and if it is, then they would be qualified, but we'll still have to go through the verification.
Okay, because we have some citizens here in America who are trying to get these resources, and it's taxpayer funded, but this is eligible for people who are coming over here. They're looking to work over here. They're looking to provide for themselves and their family. That's a decision they chose to make. They had not been paying tax dollars into our system for all these years. They come over here on a work visa, and then they can get the benefits from these handouts paid for by taxpayers. Is that correct?
Again, that's federal, and we go by the federal rules. If they meaning the federal government, say this is your numbers that you can improve, then you would have to send them through the verifications. But to answer your question, as long as it meets the federal standards, then yes, they could be.
Okay, then that would be less taxpayer resources that might be available for veterans or U.S. citizens who might seek assistance. Is that correct?
Again, the federal rules would dictate what we actually would approve. And so if a person just, came over and applied for benefits, they would not be eligible based on the criteria unless they met those federal guidelines.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So having said that, talking about a lot of cross-matching federal, state, and things like that, I would like to formally request that you provide this committee the data on cross-matching for citizenship verification, and I'd also request that you provide this committee data on the verification of eligibility for non-citizens. Let him, and then when you're ready, we'll.
I'm ready.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, in our research, we found a copy of the DHHS State Manual for Policy on Citizen/Non-Citizen Status in the Bridges Eligibility State Manual. On the very first page, it states, if a group member is identified on the application as a U.S. citizen, do not require verification unless the statement about citizenship is inconsistent, in conflict with known facts, or is questionable.
So on that, my question to you, based on this slide, is would two people claiming the same alien number allow DHHS employees to check for citizenship?
Yes, I think I understand you. If two people were claiming the same number, so that would be inconsistent, so we would have to have additional information, so it would not get certified.
So we'll find that then in the data on the cross-matching. When you provide that, then that'll be good. Thank you, sir. Slide 12.
Mr. Chair, this next slide shows when we attempted to game the system a bit by claiming this applicant was due to give birth in 2038.
I'm glad to see that DHHS would not accept an application from someone claiming to be expecting a child in 2038. So good work on that. But my question now is, how do you think it's acceptable that these flags come with a hint of, in essence, how to bypass the verification process, essentially? I mean, all you have to do when you see this bright red pop-up is change the dates, so simple math could get you around this.
You could change the dates as much as you want, but again, you still have to get through the verification process to include all that we actually have. And again, I talked about the specialists. I really have to emphasize how important our specialists are. Even with the technology, they are really good with looking at inconsistencies. That's one of the reasons why we have a high fee rate. And so I just think that, again, benefits are not issued until it's certified. And so that's the one. If I can emphasize one thing, I mean, it's constant information may come in and flow in, but those benefits are not issued until we actually have certified through verifications.
Okay. Slide 12.
Mr. Chair, the next slide shows all the questions for what would make someone an eligible non-citizen based on prior hearings we've had.
Representative Cernoglu, you have a question?
Yes, just to confirm, it was my understanding that you actually use the SAVE system to verify and any cross-match for citizenship? Okay, thank you.
Yes, that is correct.
So on slide 13, would you be kind enough to read that again?
This is a list of questions titled Special Circumstances based on the list provided on prior hearings we've had. It seems to be questions that would make someone an eligible non-citizen for aid.
So having said that, does DHHS verify any of this on the front end? And is any of this cross-matched with other databases? And if so, how often is this happening?
Every application goes through the same process. Every application goes through the verification process. Every application has to be certified, every single application. And if there's inconsistencies, and I'm going to say at times there are inconsistencies, but that's one of the reasons why it would not certify. And then there would be follow-up, i.e. a specialist calling, let's talk about what you actually put on your application. That's an interview. And so, again, multiple through a specialist, but then the technology takes into account also.
How many employees, it doesn't have to be an exact, but how many employees are specifically hired to deal with people who have not been able to use this system and now are verified, or having to in-person verify when we're talking about potentially millions of people? How many people do you have to assist them in that? Because you said that's an in-person when these start to fly.
Yes, absolutely. You're asking the amount of specialists that we have
Sure.
to cover the 100 offices, and I would say with our specialists, a little over 3,000, and then we have our RSS, which are our general office assistants, do upload scans, also a check.
Okay. Also, Representative Bruck?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being here, sir. You mentioned something about the reach back. So it sounds like a lot of Unanswered questions there's a reach back process in the verification. And you said calling, and I'm going to point out something to this point or to this part of the application that nothing besides an address was required and telephone number. There was no telephone or email required to get to this point. So I think, I guess my question is, how are you going to reach back if they don't put a phone number or an email there at the beginning?
Right, and then the application would be discarded.
It would essentially die, I guess. Is
Yes,
maybe the right-
absolutely.
Okay, so I guess maybe a lot of questions that from everyone here has kind of been centered around the why doesn't it require more information? I think you explained it pretty well at the beginning. There may be some difficulties, or maybe they don't have their card, or they don't have a phone, or something. But when we apply online for credit card or something else, they don't let you go to the next slide, or they don't let you hit next until you fill out that required spot. And you did say that you're reforming this to 3.0. Is that going to be part of the updated 3.0? It just seems like it's a lot of legwork on your folks' part to follow up with unanswered questions that maybe if you just required it on the front end, it would help a lot on the back end. Is that something you guys are looking into, sir?
We will look into it, but again, the federal guidelines, we have to make sure that even with 3.0, we are in line with the federal guidelines. And if we are, saying that, we want to add this at the front end and the federal guidelines does not, then we can't do it because that's the potential for penalty sanctions against the state. So again, we will look at every opportunity for the end user with Bridges 3.0, but we also have to make sure that we're in alignment with our federal partners.
Roger that. Thank you, sir.
Before we get to the next slide, so far, I would say we're gathering. It appears to be that we're gathering information throughout this process. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next slide.
Mr. Chair, at this point, we've reached the assets portion of the bridge card application, and we've marked this applicant as having 0 assets at all in an attempt to qualify for the most aid we could. We were required to provide 0 documentation of this.
Representative Cara.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What is the income threshold requirement for eligibility for bridge?
Different assets requirements. For CDC, it's $1 million in assets, and I can get you the rest. I can't even think of the specific.
Well, I mean like poverty line. So what's the income that somebody can have and still qualify for bridge? It's 200% of the poverty line in most situations, correct?
That's correct. And that's a federal chart that gives you the entire, because sometimes it's 185% also. So it may not be 200, it may be 185. There's a chart that we actually is in the system where we go by.
Okay, and then their bridge benefits are 30% is expected to be spent on food. Is that correct?
That's
income?
what we would hope, yes.
Okay. Now, is it possible that an individual could qualify for benefits with recognized income being at a lower number than the actual money that comes into their household if they were to be selling drugs on the black market and you just didn't know about that? Is it possible that that happens in some circumstances?
I would say anything is possible, but what we have to go by is what is reported, what is verified, and again, with that particular instance, we have our specialists. Again, we'll ask questions.
Do you think there are any cases in Michigan where people are selling drugs and having that as income, but also getting bridge cards and qualifying?
I couldn't answer that. I don't know.
You don't know that happens?
I don't know. No.
Probably happens, or just simply don't know?
I'm
going to guess it happens. I'm going to guess it happens.
I couldn't make a guess on that. I don't know.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair, this next section brings us to the income portion of the bridge application. As we learned in prior hearings, assistance programs generally have both an asset and income limit. We've marked this applicant as being self-employed, employed, and having additional reportable income. And this next slide shows the page that pops up for employment verification after you select yes.
So with this, does DHHS cross-match with any other databases to verify employment information, such as Treasury, Social Security, or the new hire database?
Absolutely, we do. We use Equifax and several other systems.
Okay, thank you. And then how often does an applicant have to update their application to DHHS?
Normally, it's once a year. Once they've been approved, once a year. However, there are mid-certs, and so mid-certs will come if there is, a change in income, a change so any changes that may require us to come back within that, not wait for the 12 months.
So what would happen hypothetically, a situation where a single mother applying for benefits on behalf of herself and her child, and hypothetically has a live-in boyfriend who's making six figures? How do we make sure that that's not happening?
Again, if the
Self-attestation, basically.
well, I mean, but you got to remember now, she's qualified. She, meaning the mom and the minor child. So that's a FIT program, and if she's qualified, then she receives that benefit. If you're talking about a live-in person, I mean, we wouldn't. We ask in our interview, but we would have to go with what was said.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Next slide.
Mr. Chair, this is the slide that shows up for self-employment verification.
So question, how does DHHS verify if someone's self-employed?
Through our actual interviews and through our actual cross-checking with our Equifax and making sure that there are no employment verifications. And of course, again, if indeed a person is not employed or if they're employed and they put on the application that they are employed, they are in violation, and therefore they could have an intentional program violation, which you got to remember that's a serious offense because you will not be qualified for any federal, including loans or so. I mean, that's something that's on the application and a part of the interview process where our specialists will let everyone know that if you come in and say you are not employed or you have self-employment, there are some mechanisms, but we do have to let you know that if we find that something else is not right, then you could be an intentional violation program.
Okay. My concern is assuming someone's unemployed, or I should say if someone's running a business that pays an employee under the table, how do we find that out? And I've heard from constituent business owners that they're turning people away because they have people that want to come and work for them that are capable of working, but they say they have to be paid under the table, and of course they turn them away. So that's a concern. Representative Cernoglu.
Thank you. I was just going to go back a little bit here and just ask, do you use asset detection and matching with the banking system perhaps to verify assets?
Yes, we do.
So you are verifying the assets. Thank you.
Representative Caro.
Quick question on that before getting to my other question, Mr. Chair. With this asset verification, if somebody's getting paid from the black market in cash and it never goes into the bank account, maybe just sits underneath their cushion at home and then they spend that cash somewhere and it's not traceable, would that be missed by this asset verification process?
Yeah, I mean, I would have to say yes. I mean, it could be missed.
Okay, thank you. And on to my other question that I was going to ask is, if somebody qualifies for a bridge card because of low income, could they also qualify for other benefits like Section 8 housing or something else as well?
Yes, they could.
Okay, and would you say that that's a system of individualism if an able-bodied person is getting that, or is that more of a collectivist society type of approach?
I would say collective as a family, as a
Like
individual.
we're all in
person.
this battle together as Americans and
Well, if
teamwork.
I mean, but if you're talking about different programs, you're looking at collectively. So if you have a family that it qualifies for housing, they would qualify for food assistance, and they may still be able to work, and they would qualify for Medicaid.
And other people have to help pay for that because we're all a team.
Well, and if they're working also, they would have to help with that
Okay.
also.
Thank you.
So I'd like to formally request on the asset verification, the data on that, the cross-matching, and the employment verification. Thank you, sir. Next slide.
Mr. Chair, this shows the page that pops up because we selected that we had additional reportable income. This is the end of the DHHS income verification portion of their bridge card application.
Representative Cernoglu.
I just wanted to just go a little further on Representative Carr's question, maybe kind of a hypothetical. If you were a drug lord or kingpin who had millions of dollars of black market money hidden in your home, would you pursue food stamps and Section 8 housing? Just personally, just curious.
Yes, you could, and you may not.
No, I'm saying would you? Would that be a reasonable choice for someone to make?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. I'm not sure I would do that if I was in that situation, but
It could
Just
go
curious.
either way. You may or may not. So,
Sure.
I mean, that's a far...
sure,
that's
personal
a-
decision, right?
Yeah,
Yep, thanks.
absolutely.
Representative Carr.
It's been a fun conversation today, and I'll just briefly say to that extent, what percentage of people who are selling drugs to other people in Michigan, maybe it's unrelated to this, are drug lords and the top kingpins? Is it maybe 95% of them are smaller, lower end people living under the radar, largely just doing their low-key process? I mean, drug lords, there's only so many here in Michigan. Maybe it's more than we want it to be, absolutely, but it's not like every single person peddling drugs is a top kingpin or drug lord. Is that correct?
Yeah. Next slide, please.
You may need a different expert on that topic.
Mr. Chair, this next slide shows the expenses section. Assuming someone answers no to all of these questions, that is the end of verification, and you can continue.
What slide is that?
Slide number 19.
Would you mind reading it again?
This shows the expenses section of the bridge card application. Assuming someone answers no to all of these questions, there is no further verification.
Thank you. So how would DHHS normally verify someone claiming to have zero expenses? I mean, if it's even possible to have zero expenses.
Again, we would go through our normal channels. We would look at the interview, and if that's a flag, then we would definitely want to talk to the individual. And then we would ask for some information, data against where they live, and so some of that would help us determine.
So up until this point, we haven't finished this portal. I got to imagine with all of these questions, they're probably on there for a reason. So I got to imagine your in-person visits are probably busy. And with that said, well, I'll save that for later. Thank you. Next slide.
Mr. Chair, this is the slide that shows, or one of the pages that shows up if you select yes on the previous questions. 4 pages pop up after selecting yes to all of those questions. with additional verification, but this slide shows the only page where a response was required before continuing with the application.
So my question is, why would we not require documents of verification or anything other than a tax deductible expense at this point?
Again, I can only say that, you know, the actual benefits would not go out the door until we actually do all of our verifications. And, Mr. Chair, probably I would also ask that this system, you know, we was talking about this, which we think is a pretty decent system, and we're going to work on improving. If we had our team to come and maybe give you a demonstration and run through it, and that probably would answer a lot of your questions. Because some of these questions, I'll be honest with you, I mean, you know, I know that from the income, the assets, I can give you the basic interview, but if you dive deeper, I don't want to give you incorrect information, and I can bring my team in to give you complete information.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next slide.
Mr. Chair, this next series of slides numbers 21 through 26, show additional questions for specific programs we chose to apply for. All these slides rely on self-attestation. The only exception will be slides 25 and 26, where you are faced with additional questions that we learned in our test you can click through without filling them out.
So up and through this, to this point, we continue to have a lot of faith in the individual telling the truth. So why does DHHS not further verify when someone's claiming special circumstances like these?
Again, you know, I would have to look at the federal requirements that may have something to do with it, but again, the benefits have not, and there's been no certification. So, you know, I'd have to look at that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, this next slide shows the first time through this application process where we see questions specifically focused on things that we learned in prior hearings would likely make someone ineligible for assistance aid.
So with that, practically speaking, wouldn't having these questions at the start of this application make it easier and quicker to verify eligibility? And if someone selected one of these up front, wouldn't that just be the end of it? I also feel like this is a waste of the honest person who's you know, filling stuff out, or the dishonest person. Are we just still gathering their information of where they live and what's going on? Is that where we're at, still on an information gathering point?
Yeah, it looks like, yes, we'll continue to gather the information and again, pick up new information. But again, you know, we have to make sure that we're following the federal guidelines and making sure that we're in line. But again, we won't be determining eligibility until we have all the information in place.
So, but in your professional, I mean, this isn't a gotcha question, sir, at all. I mean, you're very professional. I mean, wouldn't it make sense for us to verify this on the front end instead of getting all the way through this process?
The system would get us through. So it's not like an individual specialist would go step by step by step. I mean, the system would give us those, and so when we talk about the millions that come, the system would help us get through that.
System, yes, sir. Representative Menser.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered, how often does the federal government come in and update these guidelines for you?
They're constant updates and adjustments, but overall, I mean, it's not like every other year. So I mean, it's sometimes elongate, and we're able to, as a state, say, hey, these are some things that we're seeing, and could we look at it? And it has to go through the channel before it's actually approved.
And you do that? You tell the federal government sometimes, hey, this isn't working, or this isn't worded properly, or this guideline doesn't match
Oh, absolutely. We make recommendations. We don't tell them, but we just make recommendations and say, hey, we need to look at this. And normally they come up with groups, and then they bring the states back together and just collectively, like work groups, and say, hey, have you seen this? And they work through that, and then it works its way back. So there's an adjustment, but we have to just recommend that they look at.
But you have ongoing conversations, so it's not like,
Oh, yes. Ongoing conversations, yes.
Thank you.
Representative Bruck?
Thank you, Chair. Representative Menster, read my mind again. So I have a continuing, because you do mention federal guidelines a lot, and my previous question was regarding, how can you move forward, and, that you have a lot of work on the back end, it sounds like it. Per the federal guidelines, do they make, I guess they require you what to ask, correct?
That's correct.
And do they, or does the federal guidelines require what you can't require? I know that's a funny question, but at the beginning, there's a number of things. The little asterisk, the red asterisk is, you can't hit next until you fill that out. We see on this page there's a whole bunch of asterisks, but at the beginning there's a whole lot left not required, so to speak. Is that per federal guidelines then too? Like they require you to, I don't want to say accept the application even though it's not filled out completely, or is that a choice on your guys' part to try to get more people, I guess, to get the application in?
If I understand you correctly, we can't go above the federal guidelines of what they're asking. Now, anything under, we could adjust in state guidelines, but anything that's more restricted than the federal, we could not do.
Mm-hmm. But as far as I think the chair had said it, you're asking some questions that would really deny the person, that would deny their application or fail their application, or however you term it there. They wouldn't qualify, maybe is the right word. And he asked the question, well, why not have those things at the beginning? Is that partially because of the federal guidelines that are in place and how your system is supposed to be set up?
Partially, but again, as the representative mentioned, that's one of the reasons why we have those conversations, because if we recognize that maybe something should be at least ratcheted down, up, then those are the conversations that we have. And so there's continuous guidelines. And so at the front end, it was like, hey, why do we need to ask the questions? Why do we need to wait so long? I mean, that's something that we bring up, and there are adjustments to make it a lot easier for us to get through an application.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Next slide. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, slide 28, we see that DHHS allows applicants to list another authorized user of a bridge card. That's what's circled in the red.
So our bridge cards, they're essentially a debit card now, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And bridge cards are where all assistant aides get loaded up to all of the programs that we saw.
The cash and the food assistance, including summer food stamps.
Okay, so taxpayer dollars get uploaded into these, and this is in essence a debit card. And so whether it's FIP, FAP, SIR, hippity hop, no, I'm a 90s guy, but anyway, FIP, FAP, or SIR, all these end up being on that bridge card, is that correct?
State emergency relief is not on the bridge card. That's probably normally paid to vendors, but you're correct. The FAP, which is cash, the food assistance, summer EBT, the disability is loaded because it's cash onto the bridge card.
Okay, so for argument's sake, let's assume bridge cards are they only go to those who are eligible. But isn't this policy an issue? Isn't allowing someone else to use a bridge card that's not under their name ripe for fraud?
I will be honest with you. That's one of the reasons why we are looking at updating the chip and the technology. and keeping your PIN number, it's your identified PIN number. So, we can only encourage, now if you're asking, do we encourage them meaning our customers or our Michigan residents to share their cards? No, it is your card.
Yeah, just for laughs and giggles, it could look like, I got this bridge card, here's my PIN number. You give me $400 cash, I'll give you my card and you can go shopping with it. Right?
It could, but if,
It does. So that's my concern is with this. But Representative Carl?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so when somebody goes shopping with one of these bridge cards, if they wanted to get some hamburger and loaf of bread and some soda, would they be able to get all those things from the grocery store? I know there's some exemptions on what they can and can't purchase, but soda, for example, is that something that they can get with their...
So we're trying to get more healthy so a healthy drink, yes. They could.
So they could get soda?
Healthy soda.
So they can't get Coke or Pepsi, or can they get those?
It changed, so I have to get back with you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Cerniglu?
Okay, so now I actually have two questions. So it's my understanding that the authorized user for the cards is for people who can't shop on their own, like people with disabilities or elderly. Is that accurate, or has it expanded?
No, that's accurate.
Okay, because I'm just going to make a quick comment. I hope that you do allow others to shop for people who can't leave their home. So thank you for allowing for that. I've certainly been in that situation with family members, not using a bridge card, but having to shop for them because they can't do their own shopping. So thank you. And I hope you do continue that program. Other question being...
I'm sorry, Representative. Yes. So you want them to continue the process of not verifying and allowing people to use a bridge card that's not their own? That's what you're
I want them to continue the process of allowing people with disabilities who are not physically able to shop for themselves give their bridge card to an authorized user who can then shop for them.
Okay. That just wasn't the question. That's why I got thrown off. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And secondly, for this application, can someone access benefits without having to go online and do, can they do it like in person or on the phone? Because this almost seems like certain individuals, I don't want to sound ageist, but may not be able to access benefits if this is the only way that they can do it.
Right. So this is one way, and certainly you have the paper applications. You can walk into the office. So there are many, a couple different ways. So this is not the only way.
Great, thank you.
Representative Menser?
I just wanted to respond to Representative Kara. In my family, Verner's is medicine. I have had it warm, heated up in a pan from my grandmother. I have drank it cold. Verner's is medicine in my family.
There better not be a paid commercial. No, I'm just kidding. Representative Carl?
Okay. Use your money to buy that if you want to, then. Medicine is not even something you can use bridge cards for, is that correct?
That's correct. That would be under the Medicaid.
Oh, there you go. And
thank you very much.
And as to the point about the intent of it being for somebody else to go out and shop for you if you're disabled, intent and application are not always the same thing, correct? So I think to the chairman's point, maybe the intent is if you're disabled and incapable of going out and shopping for yourself, the intent might be to have somebody else shop for you. But is it possible, but by the application, that people who are very capable of going out and shopping actually have somebody else going out and using their bridge card as well? So the intent and application are not always the same thing. Is that correct?
Well, I would say also, going back to the bridge card and why it's loaded for cash and food assistance. And so, you could have that interchange, but you would have to have the approval of that person who owns that bridge card.
You're supposed to have it, but you may not always have it. Somebody else might go out and shop for you with it, right? And the grocery store attendant may not know.
I suppose they would not know, and I don't.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next slide.
Mr. Chair, slide 29 shows the very last page on a bridge application before signing and submitting.
Read that for me once again, very clear and very slowly, please.
Mr. Chair, slide 29 shows the very last page of the application for a bridge card before someone signs and electronically submits.
Thank you, Mr. Markarian. I saved this slide for last to highlight the point here. In what world does it make sense that the Department of Health and Human Services offers people the ability to register to vote before giving them money? Especially after we've seen how the only form of verification you seem to do in this application is hope that someone is being honest. So why does the DHHS feel it's appropriate to offer people the ability to register people to vote who are applying for bridge cards? My question is, are you the Secretary of State? Is DHHS a headquarters registered voting place? And why does DHHS think that they can do this without requiring a social security number or a form of ID? And due to the sake of time and there being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you for being here today. Yes, sir.